The moment Mighty froze, everything else went still. Officer Jacob Reeves had seen his K-9 partner react to danger before: armed suspects, drug busts, even that meth trailer explosion last spring, but never like this. Mighty, a muscular German shepherd with years of tactical experience, stood locked in place at the edge of a pine forest just off Hollow Creek Road, nose twitching, hackles raised. His deep growl echoed low in his throat as he fixed his gaze on a single object half buried beneath pine needles and dirt. A suitcase. Old. Mud spattered. Zipper broken. Jacob's hand went to his sidearm, his other hand tightening the leash as he stepped closer. The sun was starting to dip behind the trees, casting long shadows across the forest floor. It should have been a routine call. Kids hiking had reported something weird off the trail. Could have been trash. Could have been nothing. But Mighty wasn't wrong. He was never wrong. Jacob knelt down, nudging the case with his gloved fingers. It was heavier than it should have been. The zipper resisted, rusted and swollen from the damp. When it finally peeled back, the smell hit first. A wave of rot and copper that made Jacob gag. Then came the sight: dark plastic bags, duct taped tight, and inside them, something fleshy. Something too clean. Too deliberate. "Jesus," Jacob whispered. He reached for his radio, his voice steady, professional, but his heart had already begun pounding. They hadn't found a suitcase. They'd found a body. And this town was about to change forever. Hollow Creek, North Carolina, wasn't the kind of place that made the news. Tucked into the foothills and framed by longleaf pines and country roads, it was where folks knew their neighbors, trusted their church pastors, and left their doors unlocked after dark. Violent crime was almost unheard of. The biggest scandal in recent years had been a zoning dispute at the high school. But by sundown, word had already spread: a body was found in the woods. Then came the whisper: it wasn't whole. By the time Jacob and Mighty returned to the station, a dozen rumors had bloomed: cartel killings, a drifter with a chainsaw, satanic cults. None of them fit. Jacob knew this was something else. Something more intimate. Whoever had done this had planned it. CSI arrived from Charlotte the next morning. The remains were confirmed to be human. Female. The cuts were clean, surgically clean. No signs of struggle, no mess, no chaos. Just precision. Jacob stood at the edge of the scene, watching Mighty pace near the tree line. The dog kept circling the same spot near a second, smaller suitcase, sniffing, pawing, growling again. Another bag. More remains. Same packaging. Same method. Whoever did this had taken their time. By noon, the area was sealed off. Drones scanned the terrain. Forensics began cataloging the pieces. But for Jacob, the case didn't start with the suitcase. It started with the Whitmore family. Brandon Whitmore wasn't just anybody. Son of Edwin Whitmore, the CEO of a billion-dollar frozen foods company, Brandon had been raised on legacy and money. Clean-cut, Ivy League educated, polo shirts and country clubs. His disappearance hadn't made headlines because the family had kept it quiet. Until now. It had been 3 days since anyone had seen Brandon. His wife, Erica, had filed a missing persons report, claiming he stormed out after a fight and never came back. She'd been vague. Said he was under a lot of stress. Said he needed space. But something about her tone, her timing, it didn't sit right with Jacob. And now, standing in a forest with body parts bagged and tagged, he had a hunch. He pulled up the file on his laptop in the squad car. Erica Whitmore, 33, formerly Erica Monroe. Born in Tennessee. Brief nursing school attendance. Married Brandon 2 years ago after a whirlwind romance in California. No criminal record. No known aliases. No red flags. at least on paper. Jacob clicked through security footage from the Whitmore penthouse building. Brandon hadn't been seen since Friday evening. No footage of him leaving. No Uber pickups. No keycard activity. But Erica? She'd made 6 trips to the parking garage. Each time, she wheeled out a suitcase. The next day, Jacob brought Mighty to the Whitmore residence with a warrant in hand. Erica opened the door herself. She looked tired, polished but pale, dressed in designer jeans and a fitted gray cardigan. Her daughter, just shy of a year old, was asleep in a bassinet behind her. "I already told the other officers everything," she said softly. "I understand," Jacob replied. "Just a few more questions." Mighty pulled toward the hallway immediately, nose twitching. Jacob followed his lead. "What's he doing?" Erica asked, her voice tightening. "Just searching for any trace of your husband," Jacob answered. Mighty stopped in front of a large leather ottoman near the fireplace and barked, sharp, loud, insistent. Jacob knelt and sniffed. "Faint, but there. Blood. You clean recently?" Jacob asked. Erica didn't answer. "Mind if we look in the garage?" "Why?" she asked. But she didn't stop him. In the garage, Mighty zeroed in on a corner behind the water heater. Buried beneath moving blankets was an industrial cooler, empty. Scrubbed. Bleach strong enough to make Jacob's eyes water. Officer Reeves, one of the forensics techs, called from the other side of the garage. "We found a receipt in the trash, hardware store. 2 rolls of duct tape. Garbage bags. Rope. And," the tech paused. "A boning knife. The timestamp, 2 days before Brandon's disappearance." That night, Jacob sat at his desk long after the rest of the station had gone quiet. He watched the footage again. Erica carrying bags to her SUV. Erica returning, empty-handed. Her baby always asleep. No panic. No rush. Just, calm. He looked down at Mighty, now curled at his feet. "Something's not right," he whispered. The dog lifted his head and thumped his tail once, quiet, affirming. Jacob didn't have the full picture yet. But he knew where it started. With a suitcase. And a dog who wouldn't stop barking until the truth was out. For the first time in 20 years, Hollow Creek's annual fall festival was postponed. People whispered in gas stations and coffee shops about the suitcase discovered near the Pine Trail. Everyone had a theory: cartel dumping ground, serial killer, revenge plot. But no one could shake the image of Officer Jacob Reeves and his K-9 partner, Mighty, standing guard over a blood-soaked suitcase, the zipper partially open to reveal something no one wanted to see. While forensics combed the forest for additional remains, Reeves was already back at headquarters, flipping through missing persons reports from surrounding counties. He didn't know what he was looking for exactly, but something about the precise way those body parts had been wrapped and sealed didn't sit right. This wasn't some deranged impulse. It had planning behind it. By noon, Reeves had one potential match. Brandon Whitmore. 35 years old. CEO of Whitmore Farms, a massive frozen foods company. Married, 1 child. Reported missing by his family 3 days earlier. Last seen picking up pizza on a Friday night and never came back. But here's the thing that gnawed at Reeves: no one from Brandon's immediate family, not even his wife, had called it in. The report came from his uncle, who lived out of state and hadn't heard back from Brandon for days. So why didn't his wife report him missing? Reeves got his answer that afternoon. He and Mighty stood outside the Whitmore residence, a sprawling craftsman-style home tucked into a gated neighborhood just 20 minutes outside of town. The air smelled like gardenias and freshly cut grass. A white Tesla sat silently in the driveway. The door opened before Reeves even knocked. Erica Whitmore greeted them with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Blonde, early 30s, slim frame. Everything about her, posture, speech, clothes, was measured and exact. "Officer Reeves, right? I figured someone would come eventually," she said, stepping aside to let them in. "You're here about Brandon?" Reeves nodded. "We've had a potential match to remains found yesterday. We need to ask you some questions, and we may need to search the home." Erica didn't blink. "Of course. Anything to help." Inside, the house was immaculate. Not the kind of neat that comes from good housekeeping, but the kind of sterile perfection that made it feel like no one really lived there. A single framed photo of Brandon holding a baby girl sat on the mantel. Reeves let Mighty off leash. The German Shepherd moved with purpose, sniffing baseboards, furniture, door handles. He paused in the hallway for a long moment, head low, nose working overtime. He growled, low and brief, at the entrance to the garage. "Is this door normally kept closed?" Reeves asked. Erica nodded. "We don't really use the garage. Brandon always parked in the driveway." Inside the garage, it was freezing cold. Mighty's ears perked. He made a beeline to the back wall, where an industrial-sized freezer hummed quietly. On top of it sat a box labeled Thanksgiving decorations. Mighty barked once. Loud. Sharp. Reeves opened the box. At first glance, it looked harmless: plastic pumpkins, strings of lights, a ceramic turkey. But Mighty wasn't barking at the decorations. He pawed at the bottom of the box, claws scraping against cardboard. Reeves dug deeper. At the very bottom were crumpled receipts, neatly folded and stacked in an envelope. One was from Murphy's Hardware, dated 3 days before Brandon disappeared. The items: extra-large trash bags, duct tape, rope, and a boning knife. Reeves looked at Erica, who was standing just inside the garage door. She was watching him, her face unreadable. "You said you'd help," he said. "I am," she replied. "But I have no idea what that is." Back at the station, things moved quickly. CCTV footage from Murphy's Hardware confirmed it: Erica had made the purchases. Her expression in the video was calm, even polite, as she placed the knife and tape on the counter. No disguise. No panic. Just like someone picking up groceries. But here's the kicker: the timestamp on the receipt was 2 days before Brandon went missing. "Premeditated," said Captain Rourke, glancing over the footage with a frown. "She's not looking good." Reeves wasn't ready to make that leap. Something about Erica was off, yes. But not in a cold-blooded killer kind of way. More like someone who had carefully learned how to keep everything under control, even when it was crumbling inside. That night, he re-watched the body cam footage from the garage. He paused it at the moment Erica saw the receipt in his hand. Her eyes widened, just a fraction. A single twitch of emotion before she blinked it away. It was enough. Mighty was restless the next morning. He paced near the cruiser, nose pointed at the front passenger door like he wanted to be somewhere else. Reeves drove him back to the Whitmore residence under the pretext of a follow-up. This time, Erica wasn't home. A nanny answered the door, holding the hand of a toddler girl, no more than 2 years old. Her curly brown hair and dimpled smile were unmistakably Brandon's. "We're just here to walk the perimeter," Reeves said, showing his badge. Mighty led the way. In the backyard, he circled the patio twice before stopping at a rose bush near the fence. Reeves leaned down and noticed something glinting beneath the soil. He pulled it out, a small, charred metal piece. The corner of a pizza box. Burnt, but still legible: Tony's Brick Oven Pizza. Forensics later revealed Brandon's blood on the inside of the box. Which meant Brandon did come home that night. Erica had lied. Reeves sat in his cruiser long after the sun went down. He stared out at the mountains beyond Hollow Creek, thinking about all the ways people can smile while hiding the worst parts of themselves. The kind of pain that doesn't show up in mugshots or bank accounts. Erica Whitmore wasn't stupid. She was methodical, calculating. But she wasn't reckless. That boning knife receipt, the footage, the burned pizza box, it was like she had wanted to get caught. Or maybe, part of her wanted someone to finally see what had been happening behind the walls of that perfect home. And if that was the case, then what they were dealing with wasn't just a murder. It was a story no one had told yet. And Mighty, the dog with the nose that never lied, was just getting started. The garage of the Whitmore estate was quiet, too quiet for a home that once buzzed with power and prestige. A Tesla still sat parked in the bay, untouched, the dust on its windshield almost ceremonial. Officer Jacob Reeves stood silently by the workbench, while Mighty sniffed furiously near the industrial-grade freezer at the back of the garage. "Got something, boy?" Reeves asked, stepping closer. Mighty let out a sharp bark, low and urgent. Then he pawed at the side of the freezer, tail stiff, nose locked on a crevice between the wall and the base. Reeves crouched down and reached into the gap. His fingers brushed against something soft, paper. He carefully pulled out a torn, stained store receipt. The words were faded, but still legible. Duct tape. Heavy-duty trash bags. A 10-inch boning knife. Rope. Cleaner. The date stamped at the top chilled him, 2 days before Brandon Whitmore was last seen alive. Reeves stared at the receipt, his breath caught in his throat. "Mighty," he whispered, "you just cracked this case wide open." The receipt led them to a hardware store off Route 7, a place with metal bars on the windows and flickering neon signage. Reeves handed the paper to the store manager, a grizzled man in a Carhartt jacket with tired eyes. "You remember this purchase?" Reeves asked. The manager nodded slowly. "Yeah." Woman came in. Dark hair. Designer purse that didn't match her jeans. Knew exactly what she needed. Didn't browse. Paid cash. Security footage. The man motioned toward the back. "Old system. But it runs." The grainy black and white video was timestamped to the same day on the receipt. And there she was, Erica Whitmore, standing at the register, eyes hidden behind sunglasses, expression unreadable. She left with a plastic bag in one hand and keys in the other. Her SUV sat idling just outside the front door. Reeves felt his jaw tighten. So she'd lied. Erica had claimed Brandon left after a fight, angry, irrational, storming out into the night. But now the timeline looked different. She was planning something before that fight ever happened. Back at the station, Reeves spread the evidence across the board. The timeline, the receipts, the footage, the forensics, all of it painted a portrait that was hard to ignore. But it was Mighty's instincts that kept unlocking the next piece. At the end of the shift, Reeves leaned back in his chair and looked down at his partner. "You knew, huh?" he said, patting the dog's broad back. "You knew something didn't smell right." Mighty thumped his tail once against the floor and leaned into Reeves' leg. The next morning, the search warrant for the Whitmore house expanded to include the guest cabin on the property. Hidden away at the back of the estate, the rustic building was once used for hunting weekends and poker nights. But no one had been there in months, according to Erica. Reeves brought Mighty along. As they unlocked the heavy door, a musty chill greeted them. The place was dark, windows covered, but Mighty immediately stiffened. He trotted toward the fireplace and began sniffing beneath the hearth's edge. Suddenly, he barked. Reeves dropped to his knees and examined the floor. There, wedged into a crack in the wooden planks, was a torn strip of fabric, dark red, barely visible. Blood had dried into its fibers. Reeves carefully tweezed it into a bag. Nearby, ashes in the fireplace still smelled faintly of scorched plastic. Burned trash. Clothes. Mighty sat, staring at the hearth as if he could still hear screams echoing inside. By now, the media had swarmed. The disappearance of Brandon Whitmore had moved from gossip page whispers to full-on national coverage. Erica, when confronted, stayed poised, speaking to reporters like a woman grieving, lost, abandoned by her husband. But behind closed doors, she was cracking. Detectives noted inconsistencies in her story. The phone records didn't match. Her GPS pinged in rural areas she never admitted visiting. And now, between the receipt, the hardware footage, and the cabin evidence, the noose was tightening. Reeves was called into the interrogation room. Erica sat at the table, hands folded neatly, a tissue untouched in front of her. "You said you hadn't left town," he began, sliding the photo of the receipt across the table. She stared at it. No blink. No reaction. "Tell me about this trip to Allied Hardware," he said. Nothing. He placed a still from the CCTV footage next to the receipt. There she was, clear as day. Erica's eyes dropped. Her lips parted slightly, as if ready to speak. Then, she leaned back and crossed her arms. "I was buying things for yard work," she said softly. The knife was for pruning. The bags were for leaves. The tape. "I don't remember." Reeves leaned in, voice calm. "You bought rope. Heavy-duty cleaner. And a boning knife. The same day your husband told his assistant he wouldn't be coming into work because he had family matters to deal with. Was that you?" She looked at the camera in the corner of the room, then back at him. "I want a lawyer," she said. Later that night, Reeves sat at his kitchen table. Mighty lay nearby, head resting on his paws, eyes alert even in rest. Rain tapped against the windows. Reeves pulled out a photo of Brandon and Erica on their wedding day, young, beaming, dazzlingly photogenic. They looked like the American dream. But that dream was unraveling by the minute. He muttered to himself, "She planned it. Or at least thought about it. And she's hiding something else." He looked at Mighty. "We're not done yet." The dog lifted his head slightly, as if to say, "I know." The morning air hung thick over the small mountain town of Ashwood, North Carolina. It was the kind of early spring fog that made everything seem quieter than it really was, like the world itself was holding its breath. Officer Jacob Reeves stood outside the Whitmore residence with Mighty sitting calmly at his side, his ears perked, eyes alert. They'd been called back to the property after a new lead came through the department's tip line. A neighbor reported seeing Erica Whitmore throwing something into the fire pit behind the house 2 nights before Brandon was reported missing. Reeves didn't say a word as they approached the backyard. Mighty moved first, his nose twitching as he sniffed along the cracked stone path leading toward the pit. Something in the way the dog slowed, pawed the ground gently, then sat down, made Reeves' gut twist. Mighty had a way of signaling things no forensic tool ever could. When the dog stopped moving, you listened. Reeves grabbed a flashlight, even though daylight was breaking through the trees. He crouched beside the pit. Ashes were cold, but as he sifted through the top layer, he found something solid buried beneath the cinders, half-melted plastic, a zipper, and what looked like a scorched piece of fabric from a high-end men's jacket. He bagged everything and called it in. The lab report would later confirm the material belonged to the same brand Brandon had worn in multiple social media photos. It was an exclusive limited run, only 6 sold in the entire state. Brandon Whitmore had been tagged in 3 of them. That afternoon, Reeves returned to the house with a warrant. Erica wasn't home. She'd taken the baby and left town for a mental health break, her lawyer said. But the warrant stood, and Reeves had full access to the house. Upstairs in the study, Mighty started sniffing along the baseboards. Then he stopped in front of a large oil painting, an abstract landscape, mostly blues and whites. The kind of expensive art piece that looked like it meant something, but said nothing. Mighty barked once, short and sharp. Reeves stepped forward and examined the frame. It was heavier than it looked. As he pulled it from the wall, it revealed a hidden safe, locked by a digital keypad. They called in a tech from the department to crack it. 40 minutes later, the door clicked open. Inside was a stack of old photo albums, a burner phone, and a leather-bound journal. The albums were family-oriented: trips, dinner parties, charity events. Brandon smiling with Erica on one arm, their baby on the other. But what caught Reeves' attention were the older photos, ones Erica had kept hidden. They showed her with platinum blonde hair, much shorter, standing in front of neon lights that screamed Las Vegas. She wore tight club dresses, stilettos, and posed with men whose faces were either turned away or cropped out. Reeves flipped to the journal. Inside were pages dated years before she married Brandon, written in a different voice. Desperate, defensive, wounded. Stories of escaping her stepfather, of working under a fake name to survive, of trying to rebuild in a city that chewed people up. The final pages jumped forward. More recent entries were more organized. Cold, even. One in particular read: "He never introduced me to them. Not once. His family still calls me that girl from nowhere. I've given him everything, and he still hides me. I won't be invisible anymore." Reeves closed the book and exhaled slowly. This wasn't just a wife who felt betrayed. This was a woman who'd been running from invisibility her entire life. Someone who had clawed her way out of darkness only to be shoved back into it, by the man who claimed to love her. Later that evening, a forensic tech examined the burner phone. It contained only one contact listed under the name S. Dozens of messages, all recent, all intimate. Romantic. And they weren't from Erica. Reeves read them one by one. "Can't wait to see you again. The house in Highlands is ours, babe. Just a little longer. She suspects nothing. I'll handle it. Trust me." That last one was sent 2 days before Brandon went missing. Reeves felt a chill creep up his spine. So Brandon was cheating. And not discreetly. The house in Highlands was a secluded property registered under a shell company, recently purchased with a wire transfer that traced back to one of Brandon's LLCs. But this wasn't just betrayal. It was motive. The next morning, Reeves and Mighty visited the Highlands property. The house was empty. The lawn hadn't been mowed in weeks, and the furniture still had tags on it. Mighty began sniffing around the kitchen, then made his way to the master bedroom. There, inside the walk-in closet, the dog began to scratch furiously at the floorboards. Reeves knelt and lifted a loose board. Beneath it was a shoebox wrapped in plastic. Inside were handwritten letters, Brandon's, by the look of them, addressed to someone named Savannah. "I don't love her anymore. You're the only one who sees me for who I am. Erica will understand eventually, or she won't. Savannah. A real name. A real person. And possibly a witness." Back in Ashwood, Reeves submitted the name to the department's intel unit. Savannah Lane. 32. Yoga instructor. No priors. Lives in Charlotte. She was brought in for questioning that afternoon. Under pressure, she folded. She didn't know Brandon was missing, only that he'd gone quiet in recent days. She admitted to the affair and to knowing about the Highlands property, but swore she hadn't seen him since the day before he left town. Meanwhile, Erica's lawyer filed for temporary custody suspension, claiming mental stress and media harassment. But the DA wasn't buying it. The evidence was stacking up. And now, thanks to Mighty's instincts, they had a pattern: receipts, burner phones, hidden journals, fire pits, and a closet full of secrets. Everything pointed back to one truth: this wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't heat of the moment. This had been building, day by day, under the weight of betrayal, shame, and unresolved trauma. Erica hadn't just lost trust. She'd lost control. And Mighty, silent, steady, unshakable, was pulling every thread that unraveled the truth. The sun had long set over Maple Ridge when Officer Jacob Reeves parked his cruiser in front of the Whitmore townhouse. The street was unusually quiet for a Friday night. Porch lights flickered across the cul-de-sac, but the tension in the air felt like a storm building, silent but heavy. Mighty jumped out of the back seat with trained precision, nose already twitching. He knew the scent he was tracking. Blood. Old blood. Brandon Whitmore's blood. Inside, the forensic team was re-examining the kitchen and living room. Mighty pulled Jacob toward the side door that led to the trash bins. His sudden jerk caught Jacob off guard. "You got something, boy?" Jacob asked, following close behind. The K9 clawed at the lid of one of the large black garbage containers. The scent was strong enough for Jacob to smell it now too, something metallic and sour. With gloved hands, Jacob flipped open the lid and gagged slightly at the smell. Inside were 2 pizza boxes, half collapsed under a mound of discarded paper towels. Both boxes were soaked in a dried reddish stain. "Get forensics out here," Jacob called over his shoulder. "We found what he came back with." Brandon had returned home that night. The implications were immediate, and damning. Erica had told investigators Brandon left after their fight, storming out and never coming back. But the pizza boxes told a different story. A timestamp on the receipt inside confirmed the order was placed at 7:42 p.m., matching the footage of Brandon leaving the building. But nothing showed him re-entering. That raised a chilling possibility: someone had tampered with the cameras. Inside the kitchen, Jacob sat at the counter, watching the forensic techs photograph the boxes and bag the evidence. He looked over at Mighty, who had curled up near the back door but remained alert, eyes tracking every move. "Good work, partner," Jacob muttered. The next morning, the station buzzed with updates. A digital forensics specialist confirmed it: the camera feed from the lobby had a 6-minute blackout, edited and overwritten. The security company had no record of it, which meant it was done manually, from inside the building. Detective Sarah Nolan joined Jacob at his desk with her tablet. "Guess what I pulled from Erica's laptop search history," she said, sliding it toward him. Jacob read aloud, "How to erase surveillance footage permanently." They shared a look. "No words needed." "But that's not all," Sarah added. Brandon's phone pinged one last time the night he disappeared. "Guess where?" "Let me guess," Jacob said. "The hunting cabin." Bingo. 5 hours later, Erica's phone pings there too. The drive to the Whitmore family's cabin took 2 hours through winding mountain roads, the kind that made your ears pop and cell service drop. Jacob pulled the cruiser onto the gravel drive just after noon. Mighty leapt out, already scanning the tree line. The log cabin looked untouched: clean porch, neatly stacked firewood, even the bird feeder swinging lazily in the breeze. Inside, the air was musty but undisturbed. It was the kind of place meant for quiet retreats, not cover-ups. Mighty led Jacob straight to the stone fireplace, where the smell hit them both: smoke, but something else beneath it. He barked twice, then began scratching at the ash-filled grate. Jacob knelt and sifted through the charred remains. Among the blackened wood, he pulled out a half-melted zipper, a scorched scrap of fabric, and something metal, a single bullet casing. Outside, near the back of the cabin, Mighty continued searching. He stopped at a burned pit, sniffing the ground, then let out a low growl. Jacob joined him. The soil had been disturbed recently, scraped, compacted, and recovered. Forensics would later find bone fragments and traces of accelerant there. Back at the station, it all started coming together. Brandon came home that night with pizza. A confrontation happened. He was killed inside the house. His body was dismembered, transported in pieces. The cabin served as a secondary crime scene. But even with mounting evidence, Jacob still felt the case was incomplete. Motive was still murky. Why not just leave? Why go this far? Later that week, Jacob received a call from the Whitmore family's former nanny, Grace. She was hesitant at first but agreed to meet. In a quiet corner booth at a diner on the edge of town, Grace unfolded a story that reshaped everything. Erica was always quiet. Cold, even. But she loved that baby, Grace began, stirring her coffee. I saw Brandon yell at her once. It wasn't normal. He got in her face, slammed a chair, and said she was nothing without him. Jacob listened intently. She was scared to leave. Told me if she left, he'd bury her with lawyers and take the baby. Said he'd ruin her, Grace added. Did she ever say she wanted to hurt him? Jacob asked. No, Grace said, shaking her head. But she said, if I disappear one day, don't believe it was an accident. Back at the precinct, Jacob stood in front of the case board covered in photos, receipts, maps, and pins. Erica's mugshot stared back at him, expression unreadable. Mighty sat by his side, panting quietly, tail thumping against the floor. You knew it all along, didn't you, boy? Jacob murmured. He reached down and scratched Mighty behind the ears. You found every breadcrumb she tried to bury. And yet, the deeper truth of what happened that night, what was said, what was felt, would only come to light if Erica herself chose to speak. But now, they had the evidence. They had the timeline. And thanks to one relentless K9, they had justice closing in. The room was cold. Not from the air conditioning, though it hummed quietly overhead, but from the silence pressing in on all sides. Officer Jacob Reeves sat across from Erica Whitmore, the once praised wife of a billionaire heir, now the only suspect in his gruesome disappearance. The same woman who had smiled through interviews, baked cookies for the PDA, and posted family photos on Instagram. The same woman now shackled at the ankles, her wrists resting on a metal table. K9 Mighty sat just outside the glass partition, his head tilted, watching her through the door as if he could still smell the lie. For days, Erica had maintained her story. Brandon left after an argument. She even showed texts she claimed he'd sent the next day. But none of it held up under the weight of the evidence. Not after Mighty found Brandon's blood on the pizza boxes. Not after the footage showed her hauling 3 suitcases to her car while her husband was supposedly cooling off in the woods. Now, it was just her and Reeves. No cameras. No court. Just a detective and a woman who looked more tired than dangerous. You've seen the footage, Reeves said quietly. You know we matched the blood. We found the receipt. The knife. The bags. She blinked slowly. Her hands clenched, then relaxed. Do you have kids, Officer Reeves? The question caught him off guard. Yeah, he said after a beat. A son. Erica nodded. Then maybe you'll understand what I'm about to say. She leaned back, eyes fixed on the mirrored glass behind him. He came back that night. Brandon. After getting the pizza. Our daughter was asleep in the nursery. I was waiting. I had the evidence from the PI, photos, messages. I showed him everything. Reeves stayed silent. He knew the rhythm of a confession. You didn't rush it. He laughed, she said, voice tighter now. Said I was pathetic. That I should have known from the start he'd never stay loyal to someone like me. You were a charity case, Erica, he said. A thrill. Nothing more. Her voice cracked, just slightly. She pressed her nails into her palms. He told me if I ever tried to leave with our daughter, he'd make sure I never saw her again. Said his family's lawyers would bury me. That the courts would see me as the whore he met online. Jacob's jaw tensed. He'd heard stories like this before. Not always ending in blood, but always laced with fear, control, humiliation. I told him I wasn't afraid anymore, she said. That I'd take our daughter and go. And then he got loud. Threw the photo frame across the room. I don't even remember reaching for the gun. One of our hunting pistols. It was just, there. On the shelf. She swallowed hard. I pointed it at him. I didn't think I'd actually shoot. I just wanted him to back down. But then he lunged at me, grabbed my arm, and the gun went off. One shot. Silence. I didn't move for a long time, she whispered. He just lay there, eyes open. My baby was still sleeping in the other room. Reeves leaned in slightly. And then? Erica exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. I panicked. I wanted to call 911. I really did. But then I thought, no one would believe me. Not after everything. His family would destroy me. I'd never see my daughter again. So you? Reeves prompted. I used what I knew, she admitted. I had some medical training, you know that. I went into survival mode. I waited until the bleeding stopped, until the blood coagulated, and then I started cutting. Wrapping. Packing. Like it was just another task to complete. Her eyes finally met his. They were dry. I told myself I'd find a place to leave the bags. That maybe it would buy me time to figure something out. But I couldn't think. I just kept moving. Jacob studied her. There was no hysteria in her voice. No wild eyes or tears. Just a steady, almost eerie calm. She wasn't delusional. She wasn't unaware. She knew exactly what she'd done. And the text messages, he asked. I sent them from his phone, she replied. To make it look like he'd run off. I needed the time. Outside, Mighty shifted his paws. His ears perked at the mention of Brandon's name. Even now, he seemed alert, reading her tone like he had read every scent along the trail. And the pizza boxes? Reeves asked. I should have burned them, Erica said softly. But I was too tired. I didn't think anyone would look in the trash. Not that closely. She leaned forward. I know what I did was wrong. I know I destroyed a life. Several lives. But if I hadn't pulled that trigger, he might have done worse. Maybe not that night. But someday. He told me once, half joking, that if I ever betrayed him, he'd make me disappear so thoroughly that no one would ever find me. Reeves didn't speak. I believe he meant it, she added. Moments passed. Reeves finally stood. We'll need a full written statement. You'll be processed this afternoon. She didn't flinch. One more thing, she said. My daughter, she doesn't know, right? She's safe with Brandon's parents, Reeves said. She's being loved. That's what matters now. Erica closed her eyes, and for the first time during the entire interview, she looked small. Broken. Human. Reeves opened the door and gave a short nod to Mighty. The dog stood, tail low, watching the woman as she sat motionless, still chained to the floor. He didn't growl. Didn't bark. Just stared. As if he'd already known the truth. And waited patiently for the humans to catch up. The courtroom was quiet. No gasps, no outbursts, just the low hum of air conditioning and the occasional shuffle of paper as the judge read the final sentencing. Erica Whitmore sat in the defendant's chair, her hands folded neatly in front of her. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She just stared ahead, eyes fixed on a spot somewhere far beyond the paneled walls and solemn faces. Outside, news vans cluttered the courthouse steps. Inside, Officer Jacob Reeves stood in the back of the room, one hand resting on the thick leather leash of his K-9 partner, Mighty. The dog sat at his heel, ears forward, tail still. Calm, but alert, as always. The judge's gavel dropped. 16 years and 8 months, he declared. With eligibility for supervised release in 10. No one cheered. No one moved. And then, slowly, Erica was led away, disappearing behind a heavy door that clicked shut like the ending of a chapter no one wanted to reread. Later that evening, as the town of Hollow Creek settled into its usual rhythm, Jacob parked his cruiser near the edge of the wooded lot where it had all started. The pine trees stood like silent sentinels. A late summer breeze stirred the air. Mighty hopped out of the back seat and trotted ahead, stopping at the exact patch of dirt where he had once frozen, growling, in front of the bloodied suitcase. Jacob stood there for a moment, hands on his hips, letting the stillness wrap around him. "Good job, boy," he muttered, his voice low and steady. Mighty looked up at him, eyes shining, tail swaying slightly. No bark, no need for one. They both knew. What the cameras didn't show, what the headlines would never fully capture, was how vital Mighty had been to cracking the case. He wasn't just a tool or a sidekick, he was the one who never overlooked the small things. A hidden drop of blood beneath a freezer. A scrap of burned fabric buried near the hunting cabin. The faint trace of Brandon's cologne beneath layers of bleach and denial. Every time humans second-guessed, Mighty pushed forward. Even Jacob had his doubts early on. Erica had played the part so well, calm, cooperative, sorrowful. The way she spoke about her daughter. The quiet strength in her voice. It all made sense, until it didn't. But dogs like Mighty, they don't get clouded by charm or clever lies. He worked by instinct, by scent, by patterns humans didn't even know they left behind. The final weeks leading up to the trial had been emotionally draining. Erica's defense team painted her as a survivor, of childhood trauma, of emotional manipulation, of betrayal. And some of it was true. Her past, her struggles, her fears, they weren't fabricated. But they weren't the full story either. The prosecution leaned into the facts, the premeditated purchases, the precision of the cuts, the lack of immediate remorse, and the attempt to manipulate the investigation. It wasn't just about one shot fired in a moment of rage, it was about everything that came after. The concealment. The disposal. The cover-up. In the end, the jury couldn't ignore the evidence. They also couldn't ignore Mighty. The local paper ran a feature about him, the nose that solved the case. Kids in town started drawing pictures of him, and the department even got requests for Mighty to visit local schools. For Jacob, it was humbling. He'd seen a lot in his 15 years as an officer, drug busts, domestic disputes, missing persons, but this case? This one left a mark. It reminded him of how thin the line was between love and control, between comfort and silence. How appearances could lie. And how, sometimes, the quietest partner in the room could be the one who sees everything. On the way home that night, Jacob rolled down the windows. Mighty stuck his head out, tongue flapping in the wind, soaking in the smells of dirt, grass, and freedom. "I still can't believe it," Jacob said, more to himself than the dog. 16 years. She'll be out before her kid finishes high school. Mighty didn't respond, of course. But Jacob caught his reflection in the rearview mirror, calm, steady, watching. The same look he'd had that first night in the woods. The same look he had in the interrogation room when Erica cracked. Truth was, there were no winners in this story. A child would grow up without parents. A man's life had been taken. A woman's life had unraveled. A family's name had been dragged through the mud. But maybe, just maybe, Mighty had stopped something worse from happening. Maybe his instincts saved someone else from becoming a footnote in a cold case file. Weeks passed. Erica settled into her sentence. The Whitmore family took full custody of the baby girl, now a toddler with bright blue eyes and a quiet, serious demeanor. Jacob often wondered if she'd grow up wanting to know what really happened. If she'd find the strength to separate the person from the crime. If one day, she'd want to meet the dog who helped expose the truth. He hoped so. Because, despite the darkness of the story, there were lessons buried inside it. About resilience. About paying attention. About what people are capable of, both the terrible and the brave. One crisp morning in early October, Jacob and Mighty stood again at Hollow Creek. The sun cut through the trees in thin golden lines. Leaves crunched beneath their boots and paws. The earth had long been disturbed, evidence collected, stories told. But Mighty sniffed the air again, nose twitching, tail wagging just a little. Still working. Still listening. Jacob smiled. Let's go home, partner. Thank you for staying with us through the final chapter of this powerful story. Some cases are solved by instincts, some by evidence, and sometimes, by a dog who simply wouldn't let it go. If you were Erica's daughter, would you want to know the truth one day? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe dogs like Mighty deserve to be called heroes, consider subscribing for more true stories like this one. We'll see you in the next investigation. Paw Prints.